WNBA is currently in a state of emergency because their only star, their cash cow, and the only player who can generate interest from people who aren't identifying as them is Caitlin Clark, who is out for at least 2 weeks and possibly longer due to a quad strain. 2 days ago, the Indiana Fever announced that Caitlin Clark would be out for at least 2 weeks due to an injury, and the league's entire ecosystem collapsed faster than Angel Reese's layoff. If there wasn't any concern in the WNBA executive offices, then people wouldn't stop attending. If that was the belief that they were WNBA La La Land, ticket prices for the Fever Sky game at the United Center have dropped 71% in a single day, and fans are demanding refunds, canceling travel plans, and selling tickets at huge losses. Meanwhile, the league moved games to larger arenas, relying on Clark's popularity, and now they're scrambling as empty seats stare back at them. Where is the Angel Reese effect, which everyone keeps talking about? Let's wish Caitlin a speedy recovery by leaving a comment below with the words, "Get well soon." 48 hours after the news broke that Caitlin Clark was hurt and would be absent for 2 weeks, the market responded, and the market informed the Chicago Sky made what they believed was a brilliant business decision by moving their June 7th game against the Fever from their usual venue to the United Center, home of the Chicago Bulls. They expected large crowds and premium pricing because everyone wanted to see Caitlin Clark play in person. However, the reality is that we don't know how much time she will miss at this point. If it were up to Uncle KC, Caitlin Clark would miss the remainder of the regular season. WNBA, we don't want this, we want her, but we don't want this. Can be reminded that nobody is keeping an eye on them. Nobody is staying at home on a Saturday afternoon to watch Natasha Cloud outside of Vlad Tur. Nobody is purchasing tickets to see Bob Grier, and nobody is paying to watch Angel Reese try to play basketball. Within hours of the injury announcement, those hopes crashed harder than a wide-open Angel Reese layup. The ticket prices for that United Center game fell from $86 for entry-level seats to just $25, a 71% drop in a single day. The Chicago Sky game is the WNBA's main event, and whether you like it or not, the rivalry between the Chicago Sky and the Indiana Fever. In the WNBA, and those tickets are crashing just as well, going from $86 48 hours ago to $25. By the time June 7th arrives, it might cost you a bag of Skittles and some Lady Potato Chips to get in there. This is because real fans were making difficult decisions that exposed the truth about Clark's impact. One ardent fan canceled his flights and hotel reservations for the Connecticut Sun game in Indianapolis, saying, "We are Caitlin fans before Fever fans. She's the biggest draw, that's who the girls want to see." Most of these are just regular people who watch Kayla Clark in Iowa, and they said, "Man, I want to watch that, I want to go to those games, I want to experience." They won't be able to experience it. They're no longer driving across the pond to watch the Indiana Fever stop at WNBA. Instead, they're flying across the pond to watch CC22. The Washington Mystics faced the same nightmare scenario when they had to move their Fever matchup to the larger CFG Bank Arena in Baltimore, placing a lot of money on Clark's ability to draw in extra seats. However, when the injury news hit, prices plummeted from $41 to $22, a 47% drop that left the Mystics facing financial ruin in Indiana. TickPick data showed the brutal scope of this collapse. The average ticket price for the 4 games that Clark was expected to miss dropped from $137 to $80 across the board. This wasn't some small market adjustment or seasonal fluctuation. Teams that had bet on Clark's popularity were now facing half-empty arenas. Over the next 2 weeks, Fever ticket prices have dropped 42% since Caitlin Clark's injury announcement. The average ticket price was $137, but people are selling their tickets because they can't get face value. Angel Reese under pressure. When you think about it, there have been so many classic songs written about the WNBA dump, obviously Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie, which directly applies to what Angel Reese and her colleagues are going through right now, an immense amount of pressure to carry this dump of a league while Caitlin Clark recovers. This revealed something the WNBA didn't want to admit: their recent success story depends almost entirely on one player. The financial damage was immediate and measurable, proving that Clark isn't just another talented player or rising star. She is the reason casual fans buy tickets and plan weekend trips around basketball games. Angel Reese's presence has never caused ticket prices to spike, travel plans to change, or arenas to move games to bigger venues. The contrast is stark. One player's injury causes a league-wide economic crisis, while another player's best games barely make the public's radar. The television ratings tell a story that should make every other WNBA player extremely uncomfortable. Reese suffered a quad strain, while Chicago Sky fans were likely wondering why their own supposed superstar couldn't generate even a fraction of this excitement. 5% of the WNBA's total revenue from TV, merchandise, and attendance ratings combined. That's one player carrying more than a quarter of the league's total impact. However, the viewing numbers show an even more devastating reality for anyone who believed that other players could match her drawing power. With Caitlin Clark injured, the WNBA will be dependent on its other stars to carry the league. I'm not just talking about ratings, I'm also talking about attendance. Since Angel Reese is the only player with a well-known name, the majority of the pressure will be on her to perform, and there is ample proof that she is unfit to lead the 23 WNBA games that at least 1 million viewers. The league fails to reach the audience figures that Clark constantly achieves simply by showing up and playing basketball. This season, guess how many games included Clark? 20 out of 23. Take a moment to process that. The average viewership for games including Clark was 1. People may be thinking, oh well, the teams aren't really going to suffer, they already sold the tickets. No, you don't understand. If the Chicago Sky moved into the United Center, and let's say resale-wise they sold all the tickets. 178 million viewers compared to just 394,000 for all other WNBA games is not a small gap, that's a chasm. Teams that scheduled nationally televised games around fever matchups were now facing the reality of drastically lower ratings without their guaranteed audience magnet. ESPN and other networks had built their entire WNBA programming strategy around Clark's ability to deliver viewers. 41 out of 44 Indiana Fever games will be broadcast on national TV in 2025, the highest number for any team in the league. However, when only 9,000 to 10,000 show up, they're losing merchandise sales, food sales, beverage sales. They're losing big, and they're losing big. While regular season games featuring other supposed stars barely crack 300,000 viewers on their best nights, Clark routinely doubles that number without breaking a sweat. Angel Reese can post all the double-doubles she wants, but her games still draw the same mediocre ratings that WNBA fans have grown accustomed to over the years. 2 weeks ago last year, if you wanted to get a glimpse of Caitlin Clark, try to get that autograph. It would have cost you $300 to enter the building. This was done in anticipation that Clark's presence would consistently deliver high viewership numbers. Would have cost you $200 to enter the building, $500 to enter, and then you would have had to fight to get close enough. Now that you have a pretty good chance, I'll go down because no one will be there. Hey Caitlin, she loves her fans, so she's going to sign. Hey Caitlin, I came all the way, can I get an autograph? It's terrible that you don't play. Oh yeah, sign. This injury makes it the ideal natural experiment to see who truly makes a difference in women's basketball. The viewing data doesn't lie though, so Clark brings the so-called rising tide lifts all boats theory. Only works when Clark is actually in the water without her magnetic presence drawing new viewers to the sport. The WNBA returns to its previous status as background noise that most sports fans ignore as they stare at empty programming slots and disappointed advertisers. My inside sources tell me that Mama Ree demands free tickets, the Chicago bravado they happily offer. Casual fans who simply don't tune in for other players no matter how much the media tries to hype them up or create artificial storylines. Ree had previously downplayed Clark's influence on the WNBA's popularity, suggesting that multiple players work together to lift the sport. She painted a picture where several stars were equally responsible for bringing new fans to women's basketball. Angel Reese is now quoted as saying, "I'll look back in 20 years and be like, yeah, the reason why we're watching women's basketball is not just because of one person." She refuses to say Caitlin Clark's name. It's because, but when Clark suffered her injury, where exactly was this enigmatic re-effect that was meant to keep fans interested? The Chicago Sky's ticket sales for non-fever games stayed exactly where they've always been, at best mediocre even in their own city. You'd think that if Reese truly had this enormous drawing power, Sky fans would at least turn out to support their supposed superstar when she wasn't playing against Clark. Sorry, young lady, nobody would be watching the WNBA, and for you it's all about Caitlin Clark. She is bringing the money to the game, the planes to the game, the TV viewership, and the WNBA is on fire because although the mainstream media wants us to believe that Angel Reese is a huge star, there is years of evidence that proves otherwise. As I often say, there is a huge difference between a star and a draw. You can be a star and still be famous, and still not be able to draw flies to a fresh turd. The harsh reality is that Reese needs Clark more than her impressive social media following, which may appear impressive on paper, but doesn't translate to ticket sales or TV ratings when it matters. More than Clark needs Reese, their rivalry only creates buzz when both players are part of the plot. Without Clark to add drama to Reese's games, the background noise that most WNBA games unfortunately represent is back to normal. The Sky versus Fever matchup was compelling because of the contrast between the two players, not because Reese alone sparked that interest. While LSU fans may have initially followed Reese to the pros, they aren't purchasing tickets to watch her play random Tuesday night games against Connecticut or Las Vegas. Loyalty only goes so far when you're asking people to pay professional sports prices for entertainment that doesn't deliver the same level of excitement. People to watch this league, which is why people haven't been watching Angel Reese throughout her career. Her final season at LSU was the height of her popularity. She had just won a national championship and was making appearances in these terrible rap videos with Cardi B and a girl named Elle. Now remember that this was before her reputation was damaged and before she was playing the villain. In her final season at LSU, Angel Reese was packing the arena to 88% capacity on the road, which was much worse, averaging just over 8,000 per game. This injury created the ideal test case for determining who really makes a difference in women's basketball, and the results weren't even when Clark was taken out of the equation. Ticket prices plummeted and fan interest vanished, while games with just Reese had their usual low-level attendance and viewership figures. Her rookie season with the Chicago Bravado showed eerily similar numbers, with an 88% capacity and an average of 8,700 per game heading into 2025. Angel Reese was the only star in the secondary dump, unrivaled for the first time in her career. This was her chance to demonstrate that she could draw, and that she didn't need Caitlin Clark to do so. The league is realizing that it is impossible to create star power. The mainstream media can portray Angel Reese as a huge star through media narratives or social media hype, but without Clark, it became clear that Reese's ability to draw an audience simply isn't comparable. There's a big difference between being famous and being a legitimate draw in professional basketball. Angel Reese is great at making up stories, and she knows how to manipulate the media. If this jerk doesn't give me a raise, I'll refuse to play, and we're going to clap back at the haters. Yes, Adam Silver will give you a bag. He'll give you a grocery bag and instruct you to load it in. The Fever are now facing their biggest test since drafting Clark. Can they survive without their franchise player for at least 4 games? The team averaged 90 points per game. The person's car actually had the money to buy the groceries. 2 points per game, with Clark suddenly having to find offense without their main scorer and playmaker. This isn't just about replacing one player's output. I believe it's about completely rebuilding how they operate on both ends of the court. We also know Sophie had an injury early on, so I believe that's the advantage of our depth that we added in the offseason that we're equipped with. Have it early rather than late, because it's a great chance for our team to develop an identity and play differently. Kelsey Mitchell takes center stage as the team's veteran leader, assuming responsibility for scoring goals while handling increased defensive attention from opponents. Teams that previously centered their defensive strategies on stopping Clark will now target Mitchell as their main threat, forcing her to make snap decisions and create shots in tighter windows. Mitchell averaged 19. Last season she averaged 2 points every game. Today she wants to reach 25 points per night, while preserving efficiency to pick up the scoring load that will be missed while Clark sits on the bench. I don't think we change how we play. Instead, I think we change the emphasis in our off-ball actions compared to some of our on-ball actions. For example, when we use our personnel in a different way, you might not see as much of AB diving for the ball in a pick and roll as you would in some of the other off-ball screening actions that get her to that point or the location of our shots. You know, a lot of times with C and the ball in our hands, our shots are coming from above the break. At this point, we might get the ball moving in line when we're moving it side to side. Simply shifts the focus to the actions we get to Aliyah Boston, who becomes crucial in the paint. Teams will probably pack the paint knowing that the Fever lost their best three-point threat and floor general, so opponents can now concentrate more on interior defense without worrying about Clark's range extending beyond the arc. Boston must take advantage of more touches while coping with more physical coverage down low, as her ability to score effectively in the post and grab offensive rebounds becomes even more valuable. When the team struggles to create easy looks, the coaching staff must decide whether to slow down the pace that Clark thrived in or attempt to stay true to themselves without their identity. Ranked among the league's fastest teams in terms of pace, but that style relies heavily on having a point guard who can push tempo and make snap decisions. I also think it's a great opportunity for Caitlin to watch the game from the sidelines and grow in almost a coaching kind of mindset. We might be talking about different things on film, addressing in practice to see it develop in live action, and key players like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull get their chance to prove they belong. But early returns highlight the stark reality sets. Staying close to 500 might be the best course of action in the short term, as the Fever realize how much their system relied on one player's special skill set. These games against Washington, Connecticut, and Chicago were meant to help them gain momentum for the season, but instead the focus is on preventing a decline that could force them out of the standings completely before Clark returns to salvage their season. There are a lot of factors to consider when you consider Caitlin and her desire to play. Obviously, everyone wants to watch her compete, but for me it's about keeping things in perspective and making sure that we handle this in a way that won't have long-term effects. We need to take a long-term approach to this so that we don't have persistent problems throughout the season. I'm glad she did this because sometimes great players don't let you know when they're hurting. The WNBA recently received a reality check about what happens when you base your entire growth strategy on one player and that player gets hurt. Clark's injury revealed the unsettling reality that the league's recent success isn't as stable as everyone had hoped, but it also demonstrated her irreplaceable value to women's basketball. When she returns, every team, network, and fan will recognize her contributions to the game. Even more than before, the Fever need her return quickly if they hope to qualify for the playoffs, and the league needs her healthy if they hope to keep up any momentum from this historic season. Let's wish Caitlin a quick recovery by leaving a comment below with the words "Get well soon CC." Like and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Click the video on the screen and we'll see you in the next